Guatemala is a country in Central America. It has borders to Mexico in the north/northwest, to Belize in the northeast, to Honduras in the southeast, to El Salvador in the south. It has a Pacific coastline to the southwest, and a tiny piece of Caribbean coastline to the east. Guatemala is very tough land. You can experience volcanic activity, seismic activity, earthquakes, mudslides, and hurricanes. Guatemala has a rich and distinctive culture from the long mix of elements from Spain and the native Maya people. This diverse history and the natural beauty of the land have created a destination rich in interesting and scenic sites. History pre-Columbian. The first evidence of human settlers in Guatemala goes back to at least 12,000 BC. Sites dating back to 6,500 BC have been found in Quiche in the Central Highlands and Sipacate, Escuintla on the central Pacific coast. Archaeologists divide the pre-Columbian history of Mesoamerica into the pre-classic period, 2000 BC to 250 AD. El Mirador was by far the most populated city in pre-Columbian America. The El Tigre and Manos pyramids each have a volume greater than 250,000 cubic meters. Mirador was the first politically organized state in America. The classic period of Mesoamerican civilization corresponds to the height of the Maya civilization, and is represented by countless sites throughout Guatemala, although the largest concentration is in Petén in the northern lowlands. This period is characterized by heavy city building, the development of independent city-states, and contact with other Mesoamerican cultures. This lasted until around 900 AD, when the classic Maya civilization collapsed. The Maya abandoned many of the cities of the central lowlands or were killed off by a drought-induced famine. The post-classic period is represented by regional kingdoms such as the Itza and Kaowoj in the lakes area in Petén, and the Mam, Kaik, Kakikal, Tzuyutujil, Pocomchi, Kuiki, and Chordi in the highlands. These cities preserved many aspects of Mayan culture, but would never equal the size or power of the classic cities. Colonial era. After arriving in what was named the New World, the Spanish mounted several expeditions to Guatemala, beginning in 1519. Before long, Spanish contact resulted in an epidemic that devastated native populations. During the colonial period, Guatemala was an audiencia and a captaincy general of Spain, and a part of New Spain, Mexico. It extended from the modern Mexican states of Tabasco and Chiapas to Costa Rica. This region was not as rich in minerals, gold and silver, as Mexico and Peru, and was therefore not considered to be as important. Its main products were sugarcane, cocoa, blue anil dye, red dye from cochineal insects, and precious woods used in artwork for churches and palaces in Spain. The national flag and the erupting Fuego volcano in the background, Antigua Guatemala. Post-independence. On September 15, 1821, the Captaincy General of Guatemala, formed by Chiapas, Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Honduras, proclaimed its independence from Spain and its incorporation into the Mexican Empire, which was dissolved 2 years later. The Guatemalan provinces formed the United Provinces of Central America. Guatemala's liberal revolution came in 1871 under the leadership of Justo Rufino Barrios, who worked to modernize the country, improve trade, and introduce new crops and manufacturing. During this era, coffee became an important crop for Guatemala. Barrios had ambitions of reuniting Central America and took the country to war in an unsuccessful attempt to attain this, losing his life on the battlefield in 1885 against forces in El Salvador. From 1898 to 1920, Guatemala was ruled by the dictator Manuel Estrada Cabrera, whose access to the presidency was helped by the United Fruit Company. On July 4, 1944, dictator Jorge Ubico Castaneda was forced to resign his office in response to a wave of protests and a general strike, and from then until the end of a murderous civil war in 1996, Guatemala was subject to a series of coups with massive attendant civil rights abuses. State-sponsored murders of students, human rights activists and the ethnic Mayan peoples, gained Guatemala a terrible reputation around the world. In 1999, U.S. President Bill Clinton stated that the United States was wrong to have provided support to Guatemalan military forces that took part in the brutal civilian killings. Since the peace accords in 1996, Guatemala has witnessed successive democratic elections. Climate: the climate of Guatemala is diverse. In most of Guatemala it is hot, low 80s to 7 degrees C, mid 90s 35 degrees C depending on time of year and location, with post-meridiem thunderstorms that generally notch down the heat a bit. In the Altos, or highland area, the weather is generally a bit cooler, and ranges from the high 70s to 5 degrees C to high 80s 31 degrees C depending on time of year. Entry requirements: the following nationalities do not need a visa to visit Guatemala: Andorra, Argentina, Australia, Austria, Belgium, Belize, Brazil, Canada, Costa Rica, Chile, Denmark, El Salvador, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Honduras, Ireland, Israel, Italy, Japan, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Malaysia, Mexico, Monaco, Netherlands, New Zealand, Nicaragua, Norway, Panama, Paraguay, Portugal, Russia, Singapore, South Korea, Spain, San Marino, Sweden, Switzerland, Taiwan, United States, United Kingdom, Vatican City, Venezuela. Valid passports are required of everyone except citizens of the following Central American countries: Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador. There is a treaty of free movement between those countries, similar to the Schengen Agreement in Europe. Proof of onward travel is often required by airlines, however rarely checked by officials to gain a visa when flying into Guatemala. By plane: La Aurora International Airport, Guatemala's main airport. La Aurora International Airport, GuatIATA, is in Guatemala City. International flights arrive mostly from the other Central American countries: United States, Mexico, Colombia, and Spain. The airport is a glass and concrete edifice with modern shops and duty-free shops that you might expect in any large city. Food options may be somewhat still limited, however. American Airlines, Avianca, Copa, Delta, and United all offer service to Guatemala, albeit at high prices. Iberia also serves Guatemala City. Guatemala's secondary airport is situated in Flores, FRSIATA, Putin. This small airport receives flights from Guatemala City and neighboring Belize. Colonial era: after arriving in what was named the New World, the Spanish mounted several expeditions to Guatemala, beginning in 1519. Before long, Spanish contact resulted in an epidemic that devastated native populations. During the colonial period, Guatemala was an audiencia and a captaincy general of Spain, and a part of New Spain, Mexico. It extended from the modern Mexican states of Tabasco and Chiapas to Costa Rica. This region was not as rich in minerals, gold and silver, as Mexico and Peru, and was therefore not considered to be as important. Its main products were sugarcane, cocoa, blue anil dye, red dye from cochineal insects, and precious woods used in artwork for churches and palaces in Spain. The national flag and the erupting Fuego volcano in the background: Antigua, Guatemala. By car from Mexico, Honduras, and El Salvador, access is via the Pan American Highway. Road access is also possible with more difficulty from Belize. By bus from Belize. Multiple companies have express buses from Belize City to Flores, Guatemala, passing through San Ignacio and Sunantunic, with connections to Guatemala City. A cheaper alternative is a local Belizean bus to the border town of Banque Viejo, a taxi to the border and onward from Melchor de Mencos to Flores by Colectivo, or taxi to Tikal. There are several bus companies connecting Guatemala to neighboring countries of El Salvador, Honduras, Mexico, and Belize. Some of the companies continue onwards towards through the rest of the Central American Isthmus towards Panama via San Jose and Managua from San Salvador and Tegucigalpa or San Pedro Sula. International buses are usually first-class Pullman services in newer Marco Polo, Mercedes, or Volvo type of coaches and operate on limited schedules, usually early morning departures, with limited number of stops. Grupo ADU and OCC, Omnibus Cristobal : Autobuses de Orient, ADU, toll-free, 1-800-009-9090, MX. Grupo ADU and OCC buses do not go into Guatemala from Mexico, but they do provide onward connections to Mexico City, Cristobal : Comitán and other places in Mexico from the Mexican side of the border. The nearest ADU/OCC bus stations from Guatemala are in Tapachula, Ciudad Cuauhtémoc, and Palenque. There are also various travel agencies in Antigua, Panajachel, and San Cristobal de las Casas that sell tickets for various shuttle companies for connections between Mexico and Guatemala in smaller minivans or minibuses. Passengers usually transfer buses/vans at the border. Updated November 2017, Pullman Tour, 1A Avenida 13-22 Zona 10, Hotel Holiday Inn, Black Telephone +502 2495-7000. Operates buses between Guatemala City, Tegucigalpa, and San Salvador. Transgalgos Interference, 7A Avenida 19-44 Zona 1, Black Telephone +503 2232-3661, +503 2220-6018, +503 2230-5058. Departs 1300 hours. International services to Tapachula from Guatemala City via Retal Julia and Coatepec on one route and twice daily to San Salvador on another. They also operate a third domestic route to Quetzaltenango from Guatemala City. $17. Platinum Centro America, King Quality, 4 Ave 13-60 Zona 10, Black Telephone +502 2501-1000. Serves Guatemala City, San Salvador, Tegucigalpa, San Pedro Sula and Managua. Comfort Lines, 4 Ave 13-60 Zona 10, Black Telephone +502 2501-1000. Operates mainly between the Guatemala City and San Salvador. Fuentes del Norte, 17 Calle 8A. Y9A. Avenidas 8-46 Zona 1, Black Telephone +502 7497-7070, +502 7497-1786. Connect Santa Elena to Belize City via Melchor de Mencos and from Guatemala City to San Salvador and San Pedro Sula. Updated November 2017, Ticabas, Transportes Internacionales Centroamericanos, Calzada Aguilar Batras, 22-55 Zona 12, Black Telephone +502 2473-3737. Departs 6 o'clock and 1400 hours. Major Central Bus Company operating buses across the Central American Isthmus between Panama City and Managua. From Managua one route goes to Tegucigalpa and San Pedro Sula in Honduras while another continues along the Pan American Highway to San Salvador, Guatemala City, and Tapachula in Mexico. They also have another north-south route connecting El Salvador to Honduras. Transportes del Sol, Avenida Las Americas, Adentro del Hotel Las Americas, Zona 13, inside the Hotel Las Americas in Zona 13, Black Telephone +502 2422 5000, +502 4147 3104. Office hours MF 8 to 1800 hours and SASU 8 to 1600 hours. Serves Guatemala City, San Salvador, Tegucigalpa, and Managua. $28, one way. By boat there are several ferries to and from Puerto Barrios and Livingston, and Punta Gorda, Belize. Getting around, by bus, It's hard to miss the colorfully decorated buses that crowd the streets of major cities and highways of Guatemala. These are chicken buses, or camionetas in Spanish, and are a common form of travel for Guatemalans and a travel adventure for tourists. They are much cheaper than tourist vans or taxis and are usually very crowded, with 3 people squeezed into seats barely big enough for 2 children, and more people standing in the aisles. The buses are often used North American school buses with the Bluebird and Ford logos clearly visible. In addition to the driver, there is usually a conductor standing in the door. Many a times these people are very rude and can even be dangerous if you tell them something you don't like, for example to turn down the volume to their oftentimes nightclub subwoofers. The conductor collects fares, and from time to time jumps out to direct the bus through a blind intersection or around a tight turn. On the highways, the chicken bus drivers are aggressive, not hesitating to overtake in the face of oncoming traffic. Riding these buses on the steep highways of the Western Highlands is especially harrowing, but may be the most quintessential Guatemalan experience there is. It has to be mentioned that regularly there are many people killed in these harrowing quintessential experiences when these buses crash head-on with other vehicles, go flying into a roadside ravine or tumble and spin alongside the highway, disassembling the bus in the process and working as a blender and squasher for the passengers inside. Bus conductors may sometimes charge out-of-country tourists more than the going rate. If you look to see what other travelers are paying, you can usually avoid this problem. However, they often charge you the same as everyone else. Sending a message to the Guatemala Tourism Department will let them know of this problem. You can board a chicken bus almost anywhere along its route. If you put out your arm, it will stop. You board and find a space to sit or stand. The conductor will come back to you after the bus is underway, and collect your fare. You must recognize where your stop is, and move to the door in time. You ask the bus to stop, more or less wherever you want to get off. Also, robberies of the buses is frequent in the highway in the countryside and in the capital itself. Usually several people, one or more in the front, middle, and back of the bus get up, take out their guns and announce a robbery, or simply a group of people or even children surround you and demand your possessions from you. Sometimes this is part of the regular. By-plane regular domestic flights operate only between Guatemala City and Flores on Transportes Aéreos Guatemaltecos and Avianca Guatemala, formerly TACA Regional. By trolley, Guatemala City has a local trolley service aimed at tourists. By train there is a rail network, but aside from the occasional steam charter aimed at tourist groups, no trains, freight, or passenger, have run since 2007. Talk Spanish is the official language of Guatemala, and the most commonly spoken. Over 20 indigenous languages are still spoken throughout, but many of the Maya people have at least a working knowledge of basic Spanish as well, except in the more remote areas. For the Garifuna people in Livingston, Garifuna and English are the main languages, but Spanish is spoken as well. The most familiar form of Spanish spoken among good friends is the tu and vos form, but varies between regions. It is considered rude and very informal if used with someone that you do not know. As a tourist, it is safer to stick with the usted form. However, don't be surprised if some homestay families and some language teachers jump right into using the tu or vos form. If they do, you may respond in kind. Maya ruins are the key attractions in the country, and the most notable are El Mirador, perhaps the cradle of Maya civilization, and Tikal. Volcanoes. Guatemala has a lot of volcanoes, many of them over 3,000 m high. Volcan de Pacaya, 2,500 m, this is an active volcano about 30 minutes outside of Antigua. Some days it will not be accessible as the volcano may be too active to observe safely. Bring a jacket since it will be windy and cold at the top, although the ground will feel warm, and wear long pants as the volcanic rock can easily give you a nice cut. Tour guides can be organized from Antigua. Until its most recent significant eruption in late May 2010, you were able to walk right up to see real lava and even roast hot dogs and marshmallows over it. Although trips are still common and travel agencies still boast this possibility with pictures of tourists doing so in the past, this is no longer possible. If you decide to travel to Pacaya alone, the prices are quite reasonable. Approximately $3 entrance to the park. At the entrance to Pacaya National Park you will be required to have a local guide, licensed by the park to take you to the top of the volcano. There are two separate entrances to the park, the first located in the town of El Cedro and the second in the town of San Francisco. The El Cedro route is an easier climb, around 2 hours up and 1 hour down the volcano. The San Francisco entrance is a few miles further past El Cedro. It's a bit of a steeper climb. Guatemala is rich in natural beauty and travel opportunities. It's a country that offers so much to those willing to step off the beaten track for a little while. Antigua, Guatemala is often regarded as the traveler's hub, a crumbling, picture-perfect Central American town ringed by volcanoes. From here you can take a hike up Volcano Pacaya, take a bus to the bustling market of Xixicasanango, or sip some coffee in a street-side cafe and watch the world go by. Lake Atitlan, or Lago de Atitlan, is another frequent stop on any visitor's itinerary. A volcano-rimmed lake with plenty of backpacker hostels and Mayan villages that dot the shores. Flores in Guatemala's wild north is a tourist-friendly island in the middle of Lake Patanitza. From here you can take a bus ride to one of best-preserved Mayan ruins in the world, Tikal. Howler monkeys and dense jungle make walking around the ruins an adventure. Seismic Champi, Lanquin, near Coban, Alta Verapaz. Seismic Champi is a cascade of turquoise limestone pools created by the river plunging below ground for a stretch before rushing back out through a spectacular waterfall. Definitely worth making the trip to Lanquin for, as are the beautiful lodges that have sprung up from the captivating hilly landscape. Rio Dulce. The Rio Dulce is a majestic emerald river, sandwiched between Belize and Honduras, which sweeps out to the Caribbean. The Rio Dulce area consists of two towns on either side of one of the largest bridges in Central America, Fronteras and El Relino. Rio Dulce is a haven for sailors and backpackers, with plenty to do and to see. Finca Paraiso is a hot springs waterfall which is like having a spa day in the jungle. Castillo San Felipe de Lara is a historical fort site and an inexpensive way to spend the afternoon touring the castle and swimming in Lake Isabal. The many species of birds and animals, including manatees, makes Rio Dulce a great spot for birdwatchers, animal lovers and fishing fans. By money, the local currency is the quetzal, Q, which is named after the national bird, which has ancient and mythic connotations even today. US dollars are widely accepted and can be exchanged in most small towns. ATMs can be found in the major towns, but do not expect to find them in every tourist spot. It is fairly easy to find yourself in a town without an ATM or a place to change money. Do not expect to be able to easily exchange travelers' checks to Guatemala. You might find a few places willing to accept checks issued by American Express, but all other types are universally turned down. Even major banks in Guatemala City do not accept Visa travelers' checks. It is common to use dollars in tourist areas. You will most likely have difficulties in changing other currencies than US dollars, but euros are becoming increasingly common. Shopping. It is common to bargain for most purchases in the open-air market. Though you may be able to bargain in other places, be aware that chain-owned shops have fixed prices. You are no more likely to bargain in a Guatemalan Radio Shack than an American one. These are some characteristically Guatemalan things you might consider buying here. Ronzacapa Centenario. Guatemala's prize-winning rum fabrics and traditional textiles. Traditional Mayan blouses are known as huipiles, whipil, and skirts as cortes. Be aware that these are almost always entirely handmade, and prices for a high-end huipil may be as high as Q1000. Jade. There is large jade working factory in Antigua, but it is coarse, a very stone. Coffee. Touted as one of the best tasting varieties in the world. Cardamom. Guatemala is the largest exporter in the world and Coban is the main center of this trade. Eat different tamales. Typical food. Kikikpipian jo com ki sham tortillas and tortillas de harina. Maize tortillas are served with most meals. Frijoles negros, stewed black beans caldos, beef broths tamales steam-cooked cornmeal, with a variety of fillings, wrapped in banana leaves rice and beans, garifunifood in Puerto Barrios, tapado, ceviche and other fish meals churrascos. A typical breakfast is frijoles and rice with coffee of course. The type of food really depends on how much you want to spend and what type of place you want to spend it at. You can get almost any type of food at the main tourist locations. In the aldeas, small towns, your choices are mostly limited to those items listed above. Guatemalan food differs from Mexican food in that it is a lot less spicy, and chilies are generally served in a separate dish from the main course to be added as desired, rather than included in the food. Drink. Popular Guatemalan beers are Gallo, Lager, by far the most popular with Guatemalans, Victoria, Brava, a light Pilsner style, Moza, Dark Bock, Cabro, Monte Carlo, Premium, and Dorada. Don't be surprised if you get salt and lemon with your beer. It's a custom to put some salt on the toes of the bottle, and screw out the lemon in the beer. Sometimes it is mixed with V8 vegetable juice, and the concoction is called michelada. Guatemala produces a number of rums, including the superb Ronzacapa Centenario, which is aged up to 30 years. Tequila is a very popular drink in Guatemala. Guatemalans usually dress down when they go out. If you order a bottled drink, you will normally get a tissue to clean the bottle. Coca-Cola and Pepsi type products are available, plus many from local soft drink manufacturers. Sleep. You will likely find cheap hotels, $5 a night, in every town or village in Guatemala. In the main tourist areas, there are also many high-quality hotels, $200 a night. Learn. Guatemala is a great place to learn Spanish. The prices are low, and Guatemalan Spanish is considered pleasing. Antigua has the most Spanish schools and is also the most popular place for tourists. But if studying Spanish is your main concern, you might be better off elsewhere, because you can actually go around in Antigua for a whole day without hearing anything but English. Because of this, many language students head towards Quetzaltenango in the Western Highlands, where a wide range of language schools also offer Spanish language courses, some quite inexpensive. Another alternative is San Pedro La Laguna, seated by Lake Atitlan. Work. Guatemala City. There are various volunteering opportunities around the country. Asociación La Alianza Guatemala welcomes inquiries from potential volunteers who want to help provide care and assistance to, and protect the human rights of, the children and adolescents who live on the streets of Latin America. CARE is set to organize volunteer projects in Guatemala. 1. Casa Guatemala, in Rio Dulce, houses, cares for and educates over 250 abused, orphaned or impoverished children from the Rio Dulce and surrounding villages. A low-cost volunteer program working with the children's village or helping at one of the local businesses which supports the orphanage is available. Spanish classes are also available. Please visit the website for an application. En Mi Salsa is a Dutch foundation that focuses on development of rural women and their children. They support women's handicraft cooperative UTZ Batzi in Chichicastenango and offer scholarships to poor children. Volunteers are needed. They also arrange your Spanish language classes, homestay, volunteer work, local tours. Entremundos is a registered nonprofit organization that hosts a database of over 100 local opportunities, accessible for free on their website. They also offer various additional personalized volunteer services for a small donation, which includes working with their volunteer coordinator to arrange possible opportunities for you. For more info, email volunteering@entremundos.org. Global Vision International, GVI, PMG, to run a number of volunteering programs around Guatemala with indigenous communities. They include homestay, Spanish language classes, and other services. Mayan Families is a small nonprofit organization operating in the highlands of Guatemala. Based in Panajachel, they operate a variety of programs to support and empower the Maya people of Lake Atitlan and the surrounding areas. The work of Mayan families is supported completely through donations, which are tax-deductible in the U.S. PID, Partners in Development, is a non-profit organization that works to help the extreme poor of Guatemala. They build houses for families, provide small business loans, and offer sponsorship programs for children in need. 3. Proyecto Mosaico Guatemala, PMG, for wool, for a fee of $270, set you up with an organization in Guatemala which needs a volunteer. They also can arrange a homestay, Spanish language classes, and other services. Safe Passage/Camino Seguro welcomes inquiries from potential volunteers who want to empower the poorest at-risk children whose families make their living at Guatemala's garbage dump by creating opportunities for fostering dignity via the power of education. Some schools organize social projects as well. See, for example, the Guat Spanish School's entry under Quetzaltenango. Cope. If traveling from Mexico, be aware that Guatemala does not observe daylight savings time. Because Guatemala is generally to the east of Mexico, this creates the quite unusual situation of turning the clock back instead of forward while traveling eastward. Both southern Mexico and Guatemala are on the same time when daylight savings is not in effect. Newspapers and magazines for tourists, Que Pasa. Bilingual, English and Spanish, monthly magazine based in La Antigua with tourism and feature articles, interviews, and calendars of events, cinema, and live music. Print Ion is available for free in many places in La Antigua and select locations in Ciudad de Guatemala. Online Ion is available at Que Pasa's website. Review Magazine, 6A Calle Poniente No. 2, La Antigua Guatemala, Guatemala, Central America. 8 to 1700 hours. Guatemala's English language magazine The Guatemala Times. English language newspaper The Entremundos. Bilingual magazine about development and human rights issues in Guatemala and Central America, published bi-monthly and distributed throughout Quetzaltenango, and other areas. Stay safe. Guatemalan police checking documents. Guatemala has one of the highest rates of violent crime in the world. Travelers should take some extra precautions when in Guatemala. If you are mugged, carjacked, or approached by armed individuals, cooperate. Do not make any sudden movements, and give whatever belongings or money that are demanded. Tourists have been shot and killed for resisting muggers. Something you have to be made aware of is that sometimes these robberies are committed by off-duty policemen. Incredible as it sounds, but being a robber or kidnapper is a part-time job of many policemen. Do not go to areas known to be hotbeds of drug trafficking activity, e.g., some parts of the Putin, and do not go to the most dangerous neighborhoods in Guatemala City, zones 3, 6, 12, 18, 19, and 21. Be careful in Zone 1 in Guatemala City, especially after dark, and do not stay in hotels there. Using the slightly more expensive hotels in Zone 10 or Zone 13, near the airport, is a much better idea. Do not use buses in Guatemala City, as they are frequently robbed by gangs. Instead, radio dispatched taxis, Taxi Amarillo, are a safer way to get around the city. Another note is that when traveling by chicken bus, beware of anyone sitting next to you. Although some say that travelers should always carry a bit of extra cash and be prepared to bribe a few police officers, most tourists will have no reason to give bribes to anyone. The most likely situations in which you might have to bribe police would be if you are driving a car or riding a motorcycle and are stopped for fictitious violations of traffic rules. Most Europeans and North Americans find it immoral, but it is much easier to spend Q50 and avoid the headaches than to be harassed by the police. Phrases such as "I'm sorry officer, is there any way we can solve this right now," work well. Do not offer bribes directly to an officer because it is illegal and you could actually end up in more trouble. Never take photos of children without permission. Some Guatemalans are extremely wary of this and will assume you are a kidnapper, even if the children are someone else's. Guatemala has had many problems with children being sold or kidnapped and put up for adoption on the black market. Of course, this doesn't include a few children mixed in with many adults at a distance. This occurs mainly on the more remote Guatemalan villages. In the major cities people are somewhat more open towards picture taking, but still avoid it. It is dangerous to travel between cities after dark. Doing so significantly increases your risk of being in a car accident or being the victim of an armed robbery. Pickpocketing is common in markets, so never keep anything in your back pocket and take as little with you as possible. Stay healthy, drink only purified water. Agua pura salvavidas is recommended by most of hospitals and hotels. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control states that malaria risk exists in rural areas at altitudes lower than 1,500 m, with no risk in Antigua or Lake Atitlan. Preventative anti-malarial medication can and should be purchased ahead of visiting malaria endemic areas. Dengue fever is endemic throughout Guatemala. Hepatitis A and B vaccinations are recommended. Respect, address people you don't know in a formal manner, señor, señora, usted, and greet people in the following way: day, buenos dias, feliz dia, and night, feliz noche, buenas noches. You'll encounter this in more suburban, rural areas. Native Guatemalans are raised to greet strangers formally. Connect sunrise in Plaza Barrios, Guatemala City. Phone: Guatemala's international calling code is 502. There are no area codes. Phone numbers all have 8 digits. The phone system isn't great, but it works. Tourists can call abroad from call centers, where you pay by the minute. It is also easy to purchase a calling card to use at public pay phones. The phones there do not accept money, so to use a public phone on the street you must purchase a telephone card. Typically, the cost is around Q8 for a 10 minutes call to North America. Cell phones are quite cheap, and calling to the US through one can get as low as $0.08 a min. If you are planning to stay for a while and plan to use the phone, you should consider buying a cheap prepaid phone. Wireless nationwide internet access for laptops is also available as a service from some companies. Telefonica has good coverage with their PCMCIA-FDU cards. The postal system is traditionally not reliable, but your postcards usually get through. A stamp for Europe is Q5. There are, however, many other alternative companies to the federal mail system that are reliable, though frequently somewhat pricey. Internet access is widely available. Even most of the more remote areas have some type of internet access available. Many larger areas also have Wi-Fi. All of the Camperos chicken/pizza restaurants, which are numerous, offer free Wi-Fi, as well as many other restaurants and cafes. Some hotels may also offer computer banks with internet access. Just ask and you eventually will find some sort of free access. Mobile, 3G/GPRS, internet access. If you have an internet-capable mobile phone such as iPhone, Google Android, Nokia N95 etc., or USB dongle for your laptop, you just need a local SIM card, roughly Q25, and can start enjoying the prepaid access plans, which generally come in lots of an hour, a day, or a week. With a program such as PDANet you can create a mini Wi-Fi network that follows you around as you travel. Apparently the normal way to activate the internet after putting in the right configuration settings is to send the SMS message WAP to the short code 805, but this may not be necessary. The APN, access point name, was internet.tigo.gt. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and share.